My guest today is Jay Schneiderman, formerly the Southampton Town Supervisor, and before that, the East Hampton Town Supervisor. And I've known him a long time, and I thought it would be interesting to talk to him about how these two jobs differed that he's had for the last 20 years, I guess. Um, First of all, you were town supervisor in East Hampton just before a very dramatic town supervisor came in who almost spent the town into bankruptcy. And but that's long ago. And then you did a lot of good stuff for East Hampton. And then when you became supervisor in Southampton, how did you find that the two places differed from as far as the office was concerned and what you needed to do?
That's an interesting question. First of all, I guess, Dan, we've known each other most of my life. I think you first met me when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, when my parents were running the Breakers Motel out of Montauk. You had the Montauk Pioneer, and you were probably trying to pitch advertising to my dad,
That's
who
true.
was involved with the Chamber of Commerce. So actually, it was, I think even before it was the Chamber of Commerce, they had some business association. So yeah, that was a long time ago. So I've been a fan of yours for many years. So I'm glad you're still doing this. Um, it's funny. I became East Hampton supervisor. I took office January 1, 2000. So the big fear was Y2K.
Right.
It was a big panic. The world was going to end. Y2K.
Explain it.
Southampton, that wasn't a crisis.
I know, but
Y2K,
people don't know what that was. So tell them.
Y2K, yeah, was not a problem. All the computer systems worked.
Yeah,
We did have 9/11, September 11th, which was boy, that was a really frightening, uncertain time. And and as Southampton supervisor, I managed the town through the pandemic. So I've had my share of uncertain times. Public safety has always been, my primary concern, but I've also worked a lot on different issues. The East Hampton and Southampton, well, I'm the only person who's been supervisor of both towns. Um, and apparently, I've been told I'm the only person to have been elected supervisor of two different towns in New York State's history. So
that's
nobody's ever
great.
been supervisor of two different towns. But the towns have a lot more in common than they do apart in terms of differences. The focus on land preservation and water quality, and concerns about overpopulation and traffic, affordable housing. Um,
How were they different?
so they differ. Look, Southampton's a much bigger town, and Southampton probably has retained more of its workforce than East Hampton. Um, And East Hampton now is very dependent upon workers coming from Southampton to sort of sustain the community. Southampton is able to draw more people from within their own town to run it. The size of it in some ways makes it more manageable because of the department head structure. Having it, both towns have a 5-member town board, one of the members being the supervisor. But East Hampton's population is 20,000 roughly, and Southampton's around 60,000. They both sort of triple or quadruple during the summertime. But there's definitely an economy of scale that you get with the slightly larger town with a slightly larger tax base. You're able to you may maybe draw in more talent because you're able to maybe sometimes you're closer to where people are, maybe able to pay them a little bit more. We have really good department heads in Southampton, which creates the ability for the supervisor to, not only manage, but really get into long range planning and problem solving. I found in East Hampton more micromanaging as supervisor. More of the stuff fell on me. I couldn't delegate nearly as much as when I was in Southampton. Both towns have its group, that vocal group that come to all the town meetings. And
Right.
no, it's interesting because I've never considered myself a partisan player. Somewhere mid-career, I switched from Republican to Democrat, but I started out as a Democrat, and then I was independent for a long time. And I haven't changed position on any issues, but I have changed party affiliation. And East Hampton is now very strongly a Democratic town. I mean, probably all members of the town board, and probably most of the the appointees on the planning board and zoning board come through that Democratic organization, the committee, or certainly get appointed by a Democratic board. Southampton is far more bipartisan, I guess more purple in a way. Republicans get elected, Democrats get elected. We try to keep the boards relatively balanced between the two parties. In East Hampton, there's a lot of power with that Democratic committee, who they pick to run for town board, who they pick for supervisor is like that person's likely to win. It wasn't that way in the old days. In the old days, East Hampton was a Republican town. Days of Perry Duryea and Eddie Ecker. It was, solidly a Republican town. But I think that started to shift with, Tony Bullock and Judith Hope. And, there was a lot of development in the 80s, and people were getting very concerned about overdevelopment. And then, it was sort of equal Democrat, Republican, and gradually through the years, probably by, 2010 or something, it was pretty solidly Democrat. So I think the registration edge is significant, like 70-30, Democrats to Republicans. Southampton, it's closer to even. Actually, for the first time, Democrats now, there are more registered Democrats than Republicans. And that just happened recently. So that is a fundamental difference between the two towns.
Why is that happening, and how is it different? What does it mean when it's different like that?
Well, the county itself has been moving Republican, but the East End has been moving Democrat, including Southold. A lot of it is folks moving out from New York City, registering to vote out here. Most issues are not identifiable as Republican or Democrat. Everybody cares about safe streets. They want to feel safe in their house. They want to feel safe when they walk down the road. Everybody wants good parks. Everybody seems to want their taxes to stay low. Everybody cares about clean drinking water, open space preservation. These are not really Democrat or Republican issues. East Hampton, the Democrats, I think, define themselves fairly well on the environmental issues. I would say Southampton has had a better balance, perhaps, in terms of business. More land that's commercially zoned. So you probably have a larger commercial business sector, maybe a stronger business alliance in Southampton. East Hampton is so residential, Montauk being sort of the exception with all the hotels. But you definitely have the business community has a stronger voice, I think, in local government in Southampton than it does in East Hampton, which is another interesting distinction. But again, there's way more things in common. And, it's changed a lot through the years. When I was East Hampton supervisor, and I went right to being supervisor, so I never served on the town board in East Hampton. I was zoning board chair, and then I ran for supervisor, and I won, and I stayed a couple terms before going to the legislature. Those were the days before social media. And, there was definitely people would come to town board meetings. There was a lot of critique. The newspaper, when I first started, really, the main game in town was the East Hampton Star. There was no East Hampton Press. There was no Independent, which was there for a long time. And, you know, the East Hampton Star, you know, took their weekly shot at me. You know, I was often, you know, they put their editorial opinions out, often critical of things that I was trying to do in the town. Sometimes I'd have trouble getting things that were really positive covered. So I struggled a little bit with the media. Today, it's a different world. Today, it's A, there's a number of publications, but B, social media has made it that information is communicated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there really is no reliance on fact anymore. Now you know, it's very hard to get in front of disinformation. There are very few filters. People seem willing to spew vitriol, poison pen, you know, venomous, and it's unbridled. I mean, it seems like it's constant, and I don't remember that in the beginning where there was so much access to public servants, where false information would travel so fast you couldn't get ahead of it. I think it's made public service, doing these types of jobs, being an administrator, harder and harder. And I have to say, like, the town supervisor is the head administrator. Town supervisor is the CEO and the CFO, you know, chief fiscal officer, chief executive officer. You know, you really you're managing the town. And, you know, a lot of the time is just dealing with administrative duties. Hiring, firing personnel, putting out the fires, you know, and making sure that the paychecks get cut and the bills get paid. You know, you get a good credit rating for your bonds and things like that. And then you have this other side, which is, you know, the town board meetings and all the stuff that captures the attention in the newspapers. And that's where the big change is. You're still running the town, but there's a new, you know, maybe this is like a post Donald Trump thing where it's almost fashionable to be mean to public servants, you know, politicians. And, you know, people, there's no filters. They just will say whatever they'll say. And, you know, I'm out of it now. And, you know, I got pretty thick-skinned through the years. And I knew that I was always working in the public interest. I know that every decision I made was with the community in mind. And that sort of propels you forward. And, you know, you hope that history will judge you well. But, you know, you do have to endure sort of this, you know, the constant slings and arrows. And so, you know, I used to really highly recommend public service to people, saying, oh my God, this is the best career. You really can make a difference in your community. You know, you really can get things done. And now I'm a little bit more cautious because you have to be so thick-skinned. You know, you have to be, you know, live under a microscope and be prepared to sort of take the constant you know, negative, you know, the letters, the attacks and things like that. That, you know, whether it's in East Hampton or Southampton or really anywhere, that is a fundamental change. And that concerns me because I want good people to serve, you know. And, you know, another change is the amount of money that you need to campaign. The amount of money that you need, these tiny little elections used to be, you know, you have to raise $30,000, $30,000. Now you got to raise $150,000 for a local election. And forget about Congress. You want to run for Congress, you got to raise $5 million. So the money in politics, in elections, really, it's way too much. You know, it used to be if you volunteered in your community, maybe you worked in the Rotary or the Elks Club or, you know, Meals on Wheels, you got to know people, you know, everybody knew you, and that's how you got elected. You got elected because people trusted you because people knew that you cared. Now if you're a self-funded candidate, you have a tremendous advantage. And the campaigning can be very negative, a lot of mean ads, attack ads, and that just seems to, maybe I think that's here to stay. I wish it weren't, but
Well, back in our day, you sit down at the typewriter and you had rules and regulations, and you typed up stuff that you thought would be helpful, and people judged it one way or another and said so. Now people sit down at a computer typewriter, not that that matters, and the first thing they think about is, what can I say that will get me 1 million followers? And they think of the most outrageous things that they can possibly think of. I was going to write a story about this. We both are in great agreement on it. But my story was going to be to give an example of how these things have changed in terms of what the journalism or reading has changed, would be to write that the attack on the Capitol building on January 6th was actually done by the Democrats. They gave all the weaponry to the people at the and I said that would be a great story. All the Proud Boys. What's this? Oh, you want me to carry the spear? Okay, sure. And the Democrats are laughing and rubbing their hands together. And this would get 1 million hits. And I was going to write this as an example until I realized people are going to take this out of context and start reporting that that's in fact exactly what happened.
Well, that must have happened to you. Like, I remember your stories from when I was a kid, when I first started reading. And I pretty much believed everything you wrote. Like, okay. I didn't understand parody and satire back then. So I really, thought Howard Hughes was secretly living in the top of the Fisher building in the center of town in Montauk. So I maybe some of the space alien stuff, I don't know, but I later began to understand that it was tongue in cheek. But today, boy, what people believe is true. The conspiracy theories, oh my God.
Yeah.
And they love to spread them. I've heard so many about myself. I try to laugh, and say, oh, really? That's my secret motivation? My God, but it's
I don't know what the future holds for this, but it's sad that the rules of journalism have not been applied to in a way that was meaningful. I noticed that a lot of the local papers have abandoned letters to the editor. It used to be a prominent place where people could say outrageous things for that very purpose. Yeah. Now they're smarter and they're trying to say, look, there really are facts,
Yeah, East Hampton Star used to publish everything.
Whole story. So what do you do with yourself now that you are retired or not retired or whatever it is?
We'll see. It's kind of interesting. I got my first vacation in like 24 years. So I went away to Portugal for a couple of weeks. I really, was like, I love the ocean. I love the coast. And I just kind of wanted to see the Portuguese coastline from, the north to the south. And, it really, the cliffs are beautiful. I took lots of pictures and I did a lot of hiking. Really amazing country. I highly recommend it. The dollar goes far. It's very safe. But I'm also going to Brazil for Carnival with a group. I play with those samba drummers on the beach. So,
yes, I remember that.
So it's my first time going to Carnival. So I'm getting a little travel out of my system. And then when I come back, I may do some work in the not-for-profit world. I definitely will play some music and do some art. I may do some consulting. We'll see. I'm trying to see what it feels like to be out of elected office. After 24 years in elected office, you start to define yourself by that title that, follows your name. So, I have to get used to that, and I'm trying to help the new folks who just got elected best I can, provide information that they might not have, some of the backstory. But I'm trying to stay open to possibility. So there, I might do something with I might do something in government if there's a good opportunity. But we'll see. I might even run for another office. I had looked in the past at running for county executive, decided not to do that. I looked at running for Congress. At the moment, I'm not doing that either. Trying to take a little bit of time to, just sort of spend a little bit more time with people I care about and, get sort of back and spend a little time in Montauk. I really miss Montauk. So
Oh,
Montauk at the moment, it's so beautiful here.
yeah. You want to know the most famous thing you ever said, in my opinion? It was after you, and you balanced the town budget as town supervisor in East Hampton. Another guy came in, McGinty, his name was,
Yeah.
and began to spend more money than he had. And when it was found out about it, he blamed you. He said that it was heading that way when he took over, and this and that and the other thing. And you commented to me, you said you said that when you were the town supervisor, we had a department of dog, uh, a department for animal control for the dogs and stuff. And they had a room in the old town hall. And then when McGinty took over, shortly thereafter that, the town dog catchers now had an entire building that they built. They bought uniforms and trucks, and same number of dogs. That was your comment.
Yeah, well, they were using preservation money to plug holes in the budget. It wasn't adding up, and I realized that and called it out pretty early that there was something wrong with the numbers in the town budget. But
In the end, it got righted up with a bond, I think.
yeah. So I left the town in really good shape fiscally in East Hampton, and the same thing in Southampton, record reserves. We've had year after year perfect audits, the highest bond rating. Both towns I brought to the highest credit rating. That's my years in service, if I look back, I go, okay, certainly I don't even know how many pieces of property I helped preserve. I've signed so many contracts to preserve land,
Oh,
uh,
it was a
and
tremendous job.
and because of the CPF fund, right, the Community Preservation Fund, it was new when I was East Hampton supervisor, so I got to preserve pieces like Shadmore, which is now a beautiful state park, and the piece at Navy Beach, Navy Road over there, all the
Yep.
way at the end, that beautiful park, and uh, Jacob's Farm in East Hampton, lots of other pieces, beautiful pieces of, and then the same thing in Southampton, because we had the money. So in Southampton alone, that land preservation fund has brought in well over $1 billion.
What were some of the projects that you got in that were preserved in Southampton?
We preserved an awful lot of land, but John Steinbeck House is one of the things that that was $11 million in town money to save his house. And we helped the Sag Harbor Cinema too. They wouldn't have been able to transform that building without the town's help, and created a lot of open space. Just before I left, we agreed to purchase a really nice piece on Lake Agawam to expand Lake Agawam Park. We had purchased a piece in downtown Watermill, which is going to be a really lovely waterfront park. Um, a lot of sensitive pieces, a lot of places now, new beaches and places for people to access the water. But we did creative things too. Like we got that little driving range on County Road 39 that was going to end up being a big box store. We're able to step in and acquire certain rights to keep it available for community recreation. at affordable rates. So we've done some, creative things with the fund. I think we should do more in terms of active recreation, more in terms of ball fields and things like that. We've been doing a lot of historic preservation in Southampton, the old Girl Scout camp, on the Peconic Bay, beautiful piece of property where we're restoring the old lodge at the Girl Scout camp. We built out the Nathaniel Rogers House in Bridgehampton, the life-saving station out in Hampton Bays on the water. We were able to do some work at the Pierce Concert property. We put the money in place to rebuild that house, that historic house where this
Yep.
indentured servant, Pierce Concert, lived. We gave money to the Southampton African American Museum we rebuilt that old barbershop there.
Yep.
So we did a lot of historic buildings. Tupper Boathouse. Tupper Boathouse is another big one. So land preservation, historic preservation have been a big piece. Public safety for me has been a big piece. When I came to Southampton, the police department had a lack of community support. I'm trying to come up with a nice way to describe it. The Southampton Police Department had gone through a period where people were questioning certain things about the operations. And I was able to hire a new police chief and a guy named Chief Skrnicki, Stephen Skrnicki, who, sadly passed away a few years back. But he was able to transform that department to make it really respected by the community. I mean, we brought the crime rate down significantly. We modernized it. Morale within the department went way up. We solved all kinds of crimes, and we used a lot of technology, and developed a dialogue with the community that we did not have before. Particularly in some of the racial issues that have plagued a lot of police departments. I mean, we really went out of our way to be one community and to really develop the kind of rapport that we needed. We also increased the number of police officers and the number of patrols, vehicles out there. But public safety was very important to me, and I think I helped create a safer town. And then the financial front, just keeping taxes down. I mean, property values in the 8 years that I was supervisor in Southampton, in some areas, property values tripled. In Hampton Bays, for example, we invested in infrastructure, dealt with flooding issues, created the beautiful Good Ground Park, rebuilt the beach pavilion out at Ponquag, made it really a world-class pavilion. And prior to me becoming supervisor, property values in that area were falling and property taxes were going up. And then, I took office. In those 8 years, property values tripled and property taxes actually went down.
Yeah.
It was pretty remarkable transformation. I like that community. Hampton Bays reminds me a lot of Montauk.
Well, I want to thank you for being on this podcast. We've been on it a little over time, but it was worth it, and wish you the best for.
Always good to talk to you, Dan.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Be well.
You too.